stand-up itself is much more native an art form in India compared to the US. I am somebody who believes that, hey, there's nothing in life that you can't make fun of. Michael Banda Kamarajin, according to me, is one of the funniest movies ever. I love it. And then there are movies like Soodhu Kabum, where it's done so stylishly.
Hello, Baggy, Bhargav Ramakrishnan, and welcome to Film Company in South.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure.
I saw your stand-up special. You want to tell, just spend a minute talking about it?
Yeah. So my special is called Kung Fu Bonda. It's a special that I wrote in 2017, and I toured with it for about a year and a half. I did close to about 50 shows, and then recorded the last show in Chennai in the end of 2018. And for some reason, I just said, hey, I'm just going to can it and then keep it in a hard disk. You know, sometime when I feel that the time is right, I'll release it. I was just holding on to it. I had no idea, promise that such a lockdown period will come about. But, good fortune, not the lockdown, but during lockdown, Amazon correctly said, hey, we want a special, we like yours, can we put it up on our platform? And that's how the special came out. And the show itself is about, it's about something that I went through, and I genuinely believe, and I'm confident that everybody goes through in life, right? Everybody feels that pang of growing older is something that everybody goes through. That time in your life, and you have to come to terms with the fact that yes,
your benchmark is 30.
Fair enough. The next benchmark, I'm sure I'll write the special for the next benchmark as well.
Yeah. So tell me one thing: is it possible to make good stand-up in an Indian context without getting personal? Because a lot of the Indian stand-ups that I've seen are like they relate to their own stuff. They're bringing up stuff from their own thing, as opposed to, let's say, a Jerry Seinfeld who kind of makes these observations externally. You know, that kind of like an external gaze versus this happened to me. You know, this is like, what is it possible at all?
See, I think there are two aspects to it. First is stand-up itself is much more native an art form in India compared to the US. Right? In the US, it's existed for like 50 years now, little more than 50 years. Right? Here, our most senior, the first comic has been doing it maybe for 15 years. Right? So there's a huge difference. And so what happens is the huge crop of comics whose specials are out on Prime or any other platform, they've been doing this maybe for 8 years, 9 years, maximum 10 years, which is the bare minimum time you will go through to like discover your voice. Like when you as an art form, what you're doing is you're putting yourself on stage and you're saying, hey, I'm going to make people laugh, right? So the first wave of jokes you'll write will be the most hacky, knowing that, hey, if I say this, people will laugh, right? You know, foul language is going to, chances are it's going to get a reaction from people. Double innuendos are going to work. So that gets out of your system. And then again, self-deprecatory humor is the first thing you can write because it's the easiest thing that you'll be able to talk to an audience about. And it's not just from the artist's point of view, but even from an audience point of view, right? It's a very new art form that they are seeing as well. So what happens is right now everybody is at that, hey, okay, I can connect with it because this is something that I've gone through in my life as well. So I think what happens is you need to go through that, and then your voice will automatically grow. As an artist, you'll want to start talking about other things. So that's the one side of it. But the other side of it, I think all comedians, like observational comedy is one side, self-deprecatory humor and talking about your personal experiences is another part of it. Like if you see right now, even for example, I haven't seen Seinfeld's latest special fully yet. I've seen the first 40% of it, but he starts off talking about how, like, he addresses the audience, makes it connect, saying, you guys know me, right? You guys know how I am, who I am, what I've done in life. Therefore, you know that I could be anywhere else in the world except here. So if you guys think about it, if you were me, do you think you'd be wasting your time hacking out another one of these? Is how he starts the special. So that initial thing about talking about yourself to connect will always be there. But after that, he does move on to a lot more observational style. But again, there are comedians, for example, I forget his name, Kevin Hart in his latest special, and Kevin Hart is one of the world's biggest comedians in terms of he performs the biggest shows. His last show, the special that's out, is in Wembley Auto. Like, it's not an auditorium anymore. It's in a stadium, right? With so many people. But there he's still talking about how he and his dog have a difficult relationship because he took a long time to train his dog to not poop inside the house. Right. So that part of it, that's a voice, comic to comic preference. You'll always see that. I think you will you will start noticing a lot more styles and a lot of different comedy voices coming into our in our scene as well as we just grow older and mature.
Right. So one of the things that happens when you do this autobiographical thing is that because this is one of those art forms that requires a little bit of privilege that we need to have to quit. We need to be able to say, okay, I don't want to work for some time. I'm going to see if I can make this like a living out of this. So that requires a certain amount of privilege from the background, right? And I'm including myself in this because when I said let me see if I can try and become a film critic, it means that I could afford to kind of take that little break and say, okay, let me see if I can do that, right? So do you think that therefore naturally there is a certain upperclassness that makes itself felt in this kind of comedy?
So I completely agree with you, and it's not everything that you're saying is right. It's not just because we talk about our lives. I think what you're saying is, hey, most people in this again in this scene, and when I say the scene, I just mean any arts, barring the movies, right? Apart from movies, because movies everybody tries to get it. People, even people from villages are saying they see that big screen and they have that dream to want to get in, so they try, and some people make it, lots of people don't. But in any other sort of slightly more niche art form, it can be writing, it can be performance, it can be theater, it can be anything. The people who are willing to give it a go full time are people who don't have too much concern about their everyday existence, right? Their bare minimums are taken care of. They have that comfort that is definitely there. But I think only if somebody starts, then it will slowly start growing. So it's already started growing. You can see that, hey, now Coimbatore has its own open mics. This year, I know that in Madurai also it was going to start, but of course now probably after that. So you can start seeing Madurai, Salem, and then it will go to the tier 3 towns as well. And when you see that sort of spread happening, immediately all other voices will also start coming in. Because otherwise, right now, anyone, if they think of, hey, wanting to do something creatively in Tamil Nadu, it is, I want to get into cinema as whatever, as a writer, as a director, as a actor. Like, hey, I am a creative person who can do something other than cinema, enjoy it, and make a living out of it. Is not common yet, but it will become. And as soon as that starts happening, there will be more voices that will come in. Like YouTube has already made it possible. Right now, you are seeing so many creators who aren't necessarily coming from only the upper class as such, right? Because they don't necessarily need to do it full time. They can have their jobs, but since you can just put out content yourself and you start getting an audience for it, and the investment is just your time, energy, and just a phone, which most people have. It's becoming a lot more inclusive as a creator.
So now one of the things that you say in your comedy special is that you call your dad a Hitler, right? When
people do, all sons do.
Yeah, I think it's very, very common. But what I'm saying is, when your father comes to such a show and sees something like this on stage, how does he react?
So I see. It's
been
nice.
Let me just interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you for a bit, because why I'm saying this is, it's one thing, seeing your son succeed on stage. That's a different thing. But there's also it comes from an element of truth. So you may be exaggerating a bit, but there is still the fact that kind of thing will happen. How does that dynamic play out in your house?
So I've never really asked him how he feels about it. Okay, which is not really a surprise, because if my levels with my dad were at a stage where we could talk about our feelings freely, I probably wouldn't have been able to crack that joke in the first place.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but I said that if you saw the show, in this show particularly, I'm sure it's a good thing because by the end of the show, I also bring in the other side of the truth, the closure that will even make him feel nice about it or feel, oh yeah, okay, put a smile on his face. And both my parents have seen this show multiple times, right? But that dad joke was one of the first. Yeah, it was possibly the first joke I wrote as a comedian. Way back when I started doing comedy, I didn't write that joke for this special. Especially the joke about the cell phone and the diabetes joke. Those jokes were written in 2014. It was I think the first ever open mic I did as a saying, okay, I want to try stand-up comedy. I cracked this joke because my dad's. I write jokes about things that I feel very strongly about, right? Usually not strongly in a positive manner. It usually is irking me, or I find something weird about it, or I find something um, uh, unsettling about it, and that's what comes out. And my dad's been the biggest source of jokes for me. Right? It's been the first thing that I've thought a lot about in my life, and that's the first joke I wrote. But I know that, like you said, the success of it he enjoys, and he knows that somewhere in there the truth is there. But I also think at some level he knows that his relationship with his dad also, like, because you write the joke wherein you're not saying, hey, my dad is like this. I think all dads are like this. Like, for example, my dad. Do you realize that all when you if you're able to make that bridge, say, hey, me and my dad, this is what happens. But don't you think this is what happens with your dad as well, with all dads and sons as well? I'm hoping, I believe that at some level he realizes that, yeah, his relationship with his dad also would have been like that. And I think that's where, because of humor, right? You don't take offense because it's a joke. If you're able to take that joke, I think that's where the connect happens. This is all, again, my belief. I definitely have
yes,
not spoken to
yeah.
my dad about it.
I think I want to have this conversation with you again after you've spoken to your dad about this. Let's see what your answer is to this question.
Many years.
Yeah. Now, I spoke to Naveen Polishetty some time ago, and he told me that almost all comedy comes from great pain. And he was half joking about it, but I got the feeling that he wasn't really entirely. I mean, there was again some truth in it, because he said that, for example, your show is called Kung Fu Bonda, and I'm assuming some of it has to do with your weight. It's just like
Yeah.
like because I've been a chubby kid as well, and I know what it is like to be in school and to be the one chubby kid in the middle of like all these other stick figure kind of people. So when something like that, or when today I'm able to joke easily about the fact that I shave my head, I'm nearly bald or whatever it is. But when it started happening, I started balding very early, in the early 20s. It was a source of mortification, because you really begin to question a lot of things about yourself, and that self-deprecation, like you call it, starts happening then, because you kind of think, let me be the first to make fun of it so that I'll be able to take it when other people make fun of it, right? So does that how it work with you as well?
100%. Like, I think not just stand-up comedy, not just self-deprecatory humor, but just humor. Like, my sense of humor itself, I think is at some level a defense mechanism for me, right? Because I think everybody has insecurities in their life, and different people have different ways of dealing with that insecurity. People who are big, strong, macho usually might get angry about it. Those are the kind of people you will see often taking offense at jokes, right? Because it hits a nerve, and the way they react to that is, what the hell? They get angry. Some people get upset. You'll see them crying. You'll see them and for me, it's always been humor. I think I became a funny person because I wanted to have something. That was my little tool in my tool belt to get back at people if they try to make fun of me. I'm like, hey, I can make fun of you better than you can make fun of me. So I'll make fun of myself, and I'll make fun of you, and it'll be way better than anything you can say about me. Is where my sense of humor itself, I definitely believe, developed from at a young age itself. So I think it's again, because when things are going good, right? When you're happy, when you're fine, and there is nothing that's bothering you, it's very difficult to get moved by something and create art. Like, I think if you just take, if you treat an emotional extreme where, hey, I'm not feeling anything right now, or I'm feeling okay, I'm at a neutral state right now. From there, if you take peaks, right, when you feel really angry or really sad or really happy or really anything, the chances are in everybody's life, there are more extremes that are not happiness, that are anger, sadness, etc., than happiness. Because that peak of happiness is what we're all constantly chasing. It's
Yeah,
what we'd like to have, it's what we'd like to be, but it's not easy to attain. And if you're there and if you're just enjoying it, there's complete, you're in the moment, you're just enjoying it. I think there's no unrest that you'll reflect upon and want to share with the world. So I think if you're perfectly happy and you want to create art or write comedy, you have to be really good at it. Your craft has to be really good, because now that's totally the only thing you're depending on at that time. As opposed to when you're feeling really angry about something or really sad about something, now you have that feeling to help you. Hey, however funny or unfunny what I'm going to say is, at the first level, you will connect with me because that premise has made you also feel really angry or really sad in your life. So I've already
yeah,
made that connect with you. Now, on top of that, once I establish the connection, it's going to be easier for me to make you laugh or make you smile, because you've already bought into listening to me. So I think it's 100% true that unrest is what creates all art. And with comedy, definitely, it's literally tragedy plus time equals comedy. You can take anything, right? Like it's anything. It's as simple as you fall off a chair, you'll feel really hurt, right? And you'll feel really embarrassed if people look at you. But like 10 minutes later, or even like 5 minutes later, if you're able to laugh with everybody else saying how funny that as a scene was, somebody was sitting on a chair and the chair broke and they fell down. So with different subjects, it's just a matter of how much time it will take for that tragedy to convert into comedy. But all comedy 100% comes from unrest. It comes from some ஒரு ஆதங்கம் இருந்தாதான் அது வெளில காமெடியா கண்டிப்பா வரும்.
No, like a lot of kids today, like kids as in college kids today, they come up to me and say, see, listen, this is one constant. Nobody wants to do engineering, boss. It's like they all come up to me and say, listen, I'm not like, I don't want to do engineering. I want to become a stand-up comedian. Please convince my dad, my whatever, something. Our parents will come to me and say, my son is saying, or my daughter is saying, I want to become a stand-up comedian. It's actually never daughters, almost always sons, at least in Chennai. And they always say these things about, can you give him some advice? I don't know what advice to give, because this is like a pretty much go and try it out, and if it works kind of feel, right? So yes. If you were to give one piece of advice to people saying, I want to become a stand-up comedian, what would that be?
I'd say have patience and have discipline, right? The more discipline you have, the lesser patience you might need. But talent is, some people have lots of it, some people have little of it. Let's leave that. You can't judge somebody and say, hey, you're funny, go be a comedian. You're not funny, don't. Right? Advice you can give is, it will take time. Okay, it's not going to happen in 2 months. It's not going to happen in 6 months. It's going to take years, right? And it's going to take years.
How long did it take you?
So, well, if doing comedy full time and being able to support myself, take care of my needs was the benchmark. It took me about maybe 2.5 to 3 years, but I am the exception to the rule, because I was already a comedy producer for 4 years before that. So I could very easily make the shift. I was already a theater performer and a theater artist, and that's what I'd been doing full time. So if you say in the arts, how long did it take me? Not just in comedy, it took me about 6 years, 6.5 years to be at it before I could say, hey, I can take care of myself. Not bad. I'm doing good. Right? So it will take you that time where you need to, because the first point is, nobody is trained in the arts, right? If you see anywhere in the US, in Europe, people actually study to become even the artist. They go, whether it's writing or painting or whatever it is, they study that. And then they go try to do that as a career. Here we study something else. And then we have to, side by side, we've done something. And now, so first is there's no training. So in that period that you're spending trying to discover yourself and trying to make a living, you're actually training and getting better at your craft. You need to be at some bare minimum level at it to be able to sell it to somebody and for people to now consume it as a product and pay you money for it. So that training period is there. Next is getting that curve. In stand-up comedy, it's getting recognized. It's finding your voice and enough people connecting with your voice and liking it enough to want to book you for corporate shows, for private events. because so that's the simple curve is you start doing comedy, you start getting funny, you start getting noticed, you start getting private gigs. The peak is when you reach a stage where you're just able to put a show out there, tickets sell, and you make a living off that. Even I'm not at that stage yet. Right now, my source of income from comedy is, I'd say, about 50-50. 50% comes from all of my ticketed shows, and 50% comes from revenue from private gigs, right? So that will again shift, and you will be able to be in a state where you can just do what you want and enjoy. It will take me hopefully another 5 to 6 more years before I can get there. Very few people immediately hit that. So it's very so you need to have patience, because it's going to take time, and discipline. You need to write and get stage time. You need to be hungry for stage time. There is nothing else. If you are doing stand-up comedy, you need to write, and you need to go and try it out, and then you need to bomb, and then you need to take a recording of that, then you need to go back, listen to it, and then you need to write again, then you need to go do that. It's that you need to keep at that cycle. If you're able to do that cycle for, say, 2,500 times, then I guarantee you'll have a solid maybe 1 hour that now you can do something with. So these are the two things that I give advice to anybody if I was allowed to do so.
Now, stand-up comedy is essentially going up in front of a bunch of people and saying, exposing yourself literally, because you're going and saying, I have these jokes. I don't know, I find them maybe funny, but then I have no idea whether you guys are going to kind of find it funny. So that in a way is like public speaking, right? Because in India, a lot of people have a fear of public speaking. We don't have in school, for instance, very few of us are called in front of the classroom or something like that and asked to kind of make a presentation or something like that. It's almost always the teacher talking to us, right? So after 12th or whatever it is, suddenly we find ourselves in positions having to deal with public speaking. And how did you conquer your? First of all, did you have any issues because you were a theater performer or whatever it is? And if not, how would you say one gets over this fear of speaking before an audience?
Oh, that's difficult. I'm fortunate to have never had that fear. Like, I'm the other end of the spectrum. I'm more quiet and subtle and reserved in person. On stage is where I feel at home the most. I love being in the spotlight. I love when, hey, if 100 people are looking at me and I'm there and they're all there to look at me, I love it. Yeah, especially as long as I know that I have something to do or something to say, or even if I don't have anything to say, I will say something, because I genuinely like that. It's almost, that's where I feel the least judged as a person. Like, because in real life interactions, in a crowd, in a party, you're always scared. You feel uncomfortable of something. You might not. I'll feel shy. Like before I got married, before I found somebody, it's not like I would consider myself, I would have never been able to go and talk to a girl. But you put me on stage, I will go and I will flirt with women in the front row, like unabashedly, like no shame whatsoever. Because I am somebody, like, I've done pole dancing on stage, right? For a joke, without any shame. I can do it at the drop of a hat, because I am somebody who feels at home, and it's one of the things I love. And it's also one of the things why I love the live performance arts over acting for a camera or acting on screen, because there I have people's attention, they're looking at me, is where I feel at home. So I've been fortunate. I never had to get over that. It was just naturally there, and therefore I was able to capitalize on it. That fear, how do you get over? I think it takes a lot of effort. I think the source of that fear could be different reasons, right? I have stage fright. I think stage fright is just a symptom, right? It's you're scared of going in front of people. I think you need to, with some help, you can talk to your friends, talk to people who know you, and especially if you're somebody who wants to go and do comedy, try and understand, hey, what is causing that fear? Why are you scared of being in front of people? There could be multitude of reasons as to why that is. And if you attack that problem, if you do things to compensate, if you think, for example, oh, I'm scared because I don't think people want to listen to me, right? I don't think they're going. So then what if you start really working on what you have to say and get more sure about what you're saying? Some people will not like it because they don't think it could be physical insecurity. I don't like the fact that so many are looking at me. I don't think I look good. Again, then you need to figure out a way to compensate for that for yourself, to be able to put yourself out there. That's the way I think you can go about figuring it out. But for me, or the thing that I'd say is, what you can learn from me is, when you are on stage and in a spotlight in front of people, it doesn't matter. You put yourself out there. Like now, like in everywhere else in life, people are not supposed to judge you, or that's the ideal case. You don't want to be judged, and therefore you're always nervous about what people are thinking of you. But when you're on stage, you're putting yourself there, saying, "No, come on, judge, make your opinion, make your impressions of me. I don't care. I've chosen to be here." Right? I think
Right.
that's really what makes it work for me. So.
Okay. I think we've gotten a little grim out here, given that we're talking about stand-up comedy, which is, but I think I needed to get these questions out of the way before I ask you to do some improv right now. I'm going to say, give me a 2-minute sketch about a film critic.
2-minute what?
Sketch about a film critic.
2-minute sketch about a film critic. So so I think film critics are people who it's like people who can't do teach is a famous saying. People who can't make critic, right? It's nice because film critics will go and they'll be like, "Oh, I think in this film the director should have done that." Hey, what should you have done? Director should have done that. Okay, if you know so much about how to make a film, why aren't you going out and making a film yourself? Who is this person who sits back and says, "This is how this film should have been made"? No, the film was made however it should have been made, however it could have been made. If you think it could have been made better, then you go make it. Go. I think that would be a fun take. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with everything I said, but if you put me on the spot and said, "Take a dig at a film critic," that's what I'd say.
Yeah, but how would you kind of so then you would start off with the score and then develop the jokes around it, is what you're saying.
So how if I had to write a set on film critics, the first thing I'd do is I'd find a bunch of them and hey, what are film critics always saying? And my premise would be, why film critics are people who know so much about films. Then why the dash are they not making films, right? If they are constantly complaining about how films could have been better, and if they know so much, then why aren't they making films, right? Now compare that to who are the people in your life who are always saying things but aren't actually doing things. I'll go back to my dad. My dad is a person who always says, "இந்த கூட்டுல உப்பு இல்ல, இப்ப நீவே கூட்டு பண்ண வேண்டியதானே, உனக்கு கூட்டுல எவ்வளவு உப்பு இருக்குன்னு தெரியும்னா நீ ஏன் கூட்டு பண்ண மாட்டேங்கிற, ஏன் மத்தவங்க பண்ற கூட்டுல எவ்வளவு உப்பு இருக்குன்னு சொல்லிட்டே இருக்கு." So I would go about I love doing analogies because I think analogies work really well. It's again something I use very frequently in my writing. So that's one thing. So who find other people in everyday life who do this, who go and tell you, or a manager, right? A manager is somebody who always tells you how to do your job. And but hey, then why aren't you doing the job yourself? So these are all the various parallels of who are a film critic is basically a manager for cinema, or the cook in a house. Sorry, the person who's eating the food in the house, not the cook. Exactly. So that's how I'd go about it. So my core would be that would be my first thought. If I had to write something funny about film critics, first thing would be, hey, why aren't they making films themselves? Then now you go into, okay, now let's try and justify. Okay, why aren't they making really? Okay, we've now made joke about how they should be making. Great. But let's analyze, why aren't they making? Oh, they're scared of crowds. Excellent. Which is why the film critic is the perfect job, because for that they just need one room and they themselves sit alone and they do it. That's the other thing that you would, that's an observation. Now, how do you make that observation funny? Because it can be funny. So this is how I would sit and write set on a film critic, saying he's somebody who's a loner, right?
I have a feeling that most film critics are loners in that way. So, but tell me one thing: where do you draw the line between comedy that can be funny and comedy that can be perceived as cruel? Because you have a 9/11 joke in your set, and that's like. I heard that and I was like, I thought, like you said, comedy is tragedy plus time. So, maybe we are at a time now where we can talk about that without necessarily being that. But where would what would you say if somebody said that was like, let's say, in bad taste,
So, first is it comes from, I am somebody who believes that, hey, there is nothing in life that you can't make fun of, right? I think personally, if you made fun of me for anything and anything that I was doing, if I just released something that I've been working on for 5 years and it came out and somebody made a good joke about it, if it was a good joke, it would hurt, but I would laugh. That's my personal opinion. But having said that, I think two things are very important when you're making a joke about something, and especially when you're performing jokes about something. One is be careful that you don't make a joke about anything that you can't back, right? As if you say something, if somebody asks you and you suddenly feel, if you feel uncomfortable that you've said that, then maybe you shouldn't have said it in the first place. So make sure, especially as a comedian, as an artist, you're putting things out there. So you should always be saying things you feel confident about backing. Or if somebody points it out and you realize that there is truth in it, great. Then accept, apologize, learn, move on. Right? That's one. The other is, hey, be a little sensitive. Don't go to the US. Like, don't go to New York and necessarily crack the 9/11 joke, right? I'm performing here in India. No, the chances that somebody was deeply personally affected and is going to feel hurt by that joke is a lot lesser, right? Because, well, it didn't happen to us in our backyard. I think even in New York, it's okay because, again, what are you making fun of? I'm drawing a parallel to that incident about a plane going into a building. I'm not really making fun of the victims or the impact it had on people's lives. So I still think that joke is perfectly fine to crack.
Okay,
but for me, the bar comes. No,
but
in the
we
same.
do live in an outrage culture, right? It's like it's anything and everything can set people off. Yeah.
But to give you an example for see, like I am somebody who really believes in like the equality between genders. I think it really should exist. I think women have had it unfair. I think we do live in an overly patriarchal society. Therefore, if you see one of the ending sets in my show is the bit I do about where I use an analogy to teach people or how you should go about having sex the first time you do it in your life, right? And it's an analogy where I end up comparing women to cars, right? Somewhere when I wrote that joke, now I know that I didn't come from a place of sexism, or I didn't come from a place of objectifying women, but I realized that, hey, this joke, people who do that will enjoy this joke for the wrong reasons, right? So I felt it was necessary for me to address that. So if you notice at the end of that joke, I will address it. I will talk about how, hey, there are people out there who think this is sexist. It's not, because I make fun of my wife for being this. I make fun of myself for being this. So it's not sexist. It's just uniform objectification for the sake of the joke. Similarly, because in that, so those are points where I make sure, hey, if you feel questionable about something you're saying on stage, if you think it can be misinterpreted, if you think it can make you sound like or seem like something you are not, which is not your voice, and you become aware of it, then you need to address it in some way so that you make your communication clear. So that is how I go about writing the joke. So when is something cruel? Like I said, it's just a matter of time before something stops becoming cruel, right? And I think for a comedian, I'll tell you why, because 9/11 is relevant. So in 2014, just when I started doing comedy, again, because of the good fortune of being a comedy producer and a performer, within a year of me doing comedy, I immediately got to do a US tour of stand-up, right? I went and performed all over US, and unbelievable. Our first show was in New York. After our show, the next day, on a Monday evening, on a $5 ticket at Comedy Cellar, I got to watch Chris Rock perform. It was completely unexpected. He wasn't going to be there, but he was just prepping his material for the Saturday Night Live that he was hosting in the coming weeks. So we were blown out of our minds that, hey, for $5 we're getting to watch Chris Rock perform. But the reason I bring that up is the set he was trialing out there was his controversial set from 5 years before, where he does a bit about World Trade Center and about how they are building this Unity Tower over there, and he talks about how stupid it is to build it in the same place where somebody already attacked, and there was a lot of outrage about it, right? But again, if you feel that, hey, it's time, I can make fun of it, and I'm making fun of it for the right reasons, right? Because I think humor, like I said, is a coping mechanism. If you're feeling sad about something, laughing about it is one of the ways in which you can come to terms with it. Laughing about it is one of the ways in which you can move on, right? So I think just as much as people outrage about it, if so many people are outraging about it, if there are, even a bunch of people who are laughing about it, who still feel sad, who still feel the sorrow, but they start laughing at it because the joke is good. Then you help them by, initiating or helping with the healing process of getting over that sorrow in their life. So I think the only time it becomes cruel is if you know that it's hurting somebody and they're feeling hurt about it and you choose to continue striking them with the same joke. I think that's where it becomes cruel, because then you're just being insensitive. Hey, you know that these people are not enjoying it. Your job as a comedian is to make them laugh, and you're already aware that it's hurting somebody's feeling, and you choose to continue doing it again and again. I think that's the line. That's where it becomes cruel, and that you should never do. But apart from that, it's just, hey, be aware of the audience you're playing to and be intelligent about it. That's all I'd say.
Okay, the final question is, what do you think about Tamil film comedy?
I love some of it. I hate most of it. Right? I think like I think I think it's good because over the years we've started moving away from the idea of having comedy tracks, right? Because I never understood why a film should have a comedy track. Hey, I want to follow the story of a film, but in between, completely unrelated to what is happening, they have these independent tracks. Though the tracks themselves may be really funny. I'm like, hey, that by itself as a sketch is really funny. But what is it doing in the middle of this movie where I just want to find out what happens next in the plot? I think the fact that we've moved away from that is really, really good. See, I think Tamil comedy, I find it amazing because I think Tamil language lends itself beautifully to comedy. I genuinely believe that it's, as a language, it's better for comedy than most other languages. Definitely better than English, I'd say. I don't know Hindi enough, but I also believe that it's better than Hindi. Just because it's nuanced, the fact that there is so much wordplay automatically, intrinsically available in the language, and the way it sounds when you crack jokes in Tamil, I'm just a huge fan. Right? So I think we have a lot of people who use it very well in Tamil cinema. So there are movies like Panchadantram and Michael Madana Kamarajan, which I think are, it's, even now I laugh. Like Michael Madana Kamarajan, according to me, is one of the funniest movies ever. I love it. And then there are movies like Soodhu Kabum, where it's done so stylishly and it's funny. It catches you by surprise and you laugh. But I think a lot of Tamil humor is just like, it's just repetitive and it's just, hey, I've found something, like somebody did it before, it was funny, so I'm going to be trying to do that again, which I don't enjoy at all. Right? So that's the catch. So I think Tamil and Tamil comedy are simply the best. Like I find, if there's one thing that I constantly find regretting in life personally, it's that I don't think in Tamil. Like I talk in Tamil, I can perform in Tamil on stage, in a play or act in a Tamil movie when lines are given to me. But stand up, I find very difficult to do, like extensively in Tamil. Of course, there will be Tamil in my stand up, anywhere between 60-40 to 85-15 is the English to Tamil percentage in my show. But I can never switch it around. I can never do a majorly Tamil show easily. I've tried also, it's really difficult. Because I think in English, and I wish I could do it in Tamil because it's so beautiful. But in Tamil films, I think a lot of the comedy is just boring, right? Okay. Also, maybe that's why when some of the good jokes come about, or what the good comedians do really stands out and is hilarious.
Okay. On that note, thank you so much for coming over to Film Companion South. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. All right.
So,
see you.
Once again, before you go, I'd just like to know what you thought about the show. Since you saw it, I'd love to hear what you thought about Kung Fu Bonda. Would you recommend?
But I thought I have to be able to do stand-up comedy first before I comment on it, right?
It's okay. I'll make an exception this time as just an audience.
No, I enjoyed bits of it. I kind of identified a lot with it. I kind of like parts of it. The only thing I find about stand-up comedy as a whole is that when a show goes on for about an hour and 15 minutes or an hour 20, I find that there are always bits that work for you and bits that don't work for you. And I think that's inevitable because, but I'm also saying that the parts that kind of I say are not working for me may work for other people. So I think I personally, as a viewer, like comedy sets that are shorter. But this was fun to watch, and like I got a lot of the references, so it was kind of it was a I think a lot of people are also watching comedy now because it's so grim outside with the world outside right now that I think anything that relaxes them or makes their life a little easier is kind of fun. So yeah, so keep doing what you do, and
Thank
all
you.
the best. Yeah.
Thank you.